For the virtual entrepreneurship toolkit series. We'll be getting started here in a minute or two. We'll give some time for some people to hop on in. So enjoy some paradise music amongst our windy, howling rains here in Sacramento, at least. So. Hey there, Thomas. Hey, Kelly. Give it one more minute and then we'll jump on in. Thank you all for being here. And let's get started with the toolkit series. We'll be adding some people as we go. So launching in, thank you all for jumping in for session one of the virtual entrepreneurship toolkit series. My name is Cameron Law and I'm the executive director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'm joined by one of our entrepreneurs in residence, Dr. Brian Gladden. For those of you that don't know, the Carlson Center serves as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. We have a mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region, and we have a vision to make this greater Sacramento region a premier hub for regional innovation and entrepreneurship. And how we've gone about operationalizing our mission and vision is really through what we call the entrepreneurial journey. So we've broken that journey into three core segments, the first being our Discover programs, which are all about building those on-ramps into the entrepreneurial journey. Then we have our Build programs, which are all about helping entrepreneurs take those ideas they have and really providing them with the business modeling tools to be able to build a testable and a systematic way to go about building those basically business models that are desirable, viable, and feasible. And so you'll learn more about that. And that's where our toolkit series falls. And then our last set of programs are our launch programs to help accelerate you and scale that growth going forward. So tonight's session, we're going to be covering customer segments, customer problems, and we're going to be tackling building a leader.
Cameron, I muted you on accident. Unmute yourself.
No worries. That sounds good. Thanks. He's admitting people. I was like, oh, I was muted there. So if you didn't hear, Dale Carlson is going to be joining us later in the workshop here today. He was the founder of Sleep Train Mattress Center. He's the founder and CEO of Ticket to Dream Foundation, and also the CEO of Bunker Wilson and the founder of the Carlson Center. So before I pass it over to Brian, a little bit of housekeeping. We'd love to have a video on if possible. We totally understand if you're not able to, but it definitely creates for a better environment for all of us engaging here tonight. We would like you to remain muted while presenting is going on. You can definitely unmute when we're in the breakout sessions. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can bring those questions into the space. But if you haven't used the chat tool, we'd love for you to introduce yourself and share who you are and what you're working on, and feel free to put your LinkedIn there to build some connections. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Brian, who will be our leader of the toolkit series. So take it away, Brian.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen and we'll get moving. So. There we go. All right. I think you guys can see my screen okay now.
You got it.
Clear these things off. Wonderful. Thank you guys all for joining. It's great to have everybody here. It looks like we have lots of new folks, which I love to see. So thank you all for joining, and some returnees who are now veterans in this. So we're going to get some of you to teach some of this stuff pretty soon. So I see Thomas and Dick and a few others here that are vets. So thank you guys for supporting. We are going to do things a little bit different tonight. than the norm. For those of you who've been before, we usually do several exercises. Tonight we're going to do one. The hands-on obviously is key. We're going to take that time for one of the exercises to make sure we have more time for Dale Carlson tonight, because that's a special guest we can ask questions to. So we're going to quickly get into all of the good content here that hopefully you guys can at the end write those questions down, put them in the chat, and we'll take those at the end after we talk to Dale as well. So week one, as Cameron said, is really about the beginning of this journey. The customer segment, problems, and the team. These are the places you have to start. Weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5 is obviously important, but it's those other things that honestly don't matter if you don't have a customer that has a problem. Everything else is just fluff, and you're wasting your time if you don't have a customer who's got a problem. If you're inventing something because you think it's cool and you can, that's called a hobby. Doesn't mean anyone's going to buy it. So that is the thing we're going to talk about tonight, is how do we make sure we validate that our customers have these problems we think exist. Our goals for you tonight are, one, understand the COVID environment, right? Let's keep it real that this is happening. It's affecting every industry, some more than others. We're going to talk about, as an entrepreneur, how do you benefit from that? Why is this a good thing as an entrepreneur? We're going to talk about building your business model, which is your business plan, and how to do that quickly and iteratively. Tell your story with the lean canvas, which we'll go through to build your pitch deck. And then examine your customers and their problems. This is the big crux of it. Part of that is testing your assumptions and validation. And this you'll see running through most weeks. That never stops. It's not one phase, it's continuous. And tonight's big one is about building your leadership team with purpose and vision. And this, I think, is one thing that gets overlooked with entrepreneurs, is like, hey, we'll figure that out later on when we need to. Well, that's a thing that investors look at. So we need to understand it now. It doesn't mean you have to have all the answers, but you need to think about it. So the idea, most of you on this call have an idea, or you're already working on your idea to get to market. Some of you are past the journey of starting with the idea and how do I get on paper and a business plan, and you guys are already on your MVP and trying to launch. So we have a big, huge, probably dichotomy of people here who a range of skills and where they're at in their journey. Either you probably experienced some pain, you saw a problem or a need, someone told you there was a problem or a need, or you just think there is, you in the shower, it came to you, oh, that sounds like a problem. So the question is, how do we validate that us as entrepreneurs, anybody but us actually cares about our idea and our opinion? Because right now it's your opinion, and we all know what opinions are worth. We all, heard those sayings. So it's a hypothesis. As soon as we write this down, we are then creating a hypothesis that I think this problem, this solution can solve a problem. Now it's our job as entrepreneurs to go out and validate that customers actually have that problem. And are there enough of those customers to actually make a business out of it that we can prove to investors that you want to give me money for? And that's what we're going to discuss now. So COVID, we all know that this has changed dramatically how we do things. We wouldn't be probably Zooming if COVID didn't happen, right? We would probably be at the Carlson Center. Many of you in person, we probably would still be doing this as a stream to some people, but it wouldn't be reaching the broader audience. And what's interesting is we all know that many, many businesses are suffering and closing, going bankrupt because of COVID. And that's awful. We probably have friends that that's happening to. But what we need to understand as entrepreneurs is that is nothing new. The degree and severity and timeline of that is accelerated because of COVID. But most businesses, not all, most businesses close because they're not meeting the customer's needs. There are many businesses through COVID, even restaurants, that are thriving. I have friends who have restaurants in Rockland that were doing twice as much restaurant business in COVID as they were pre-COVID because they changed their model, right, to meet the new customer needs. Many businesses closed because they wanted to do business the same way they've been doing it. They didn't pivot. They didn't change to meet the new customer needs. We exist as businesses to serve those customers. And if their needs change, you have to change your business model. 25% fewer small businesses in December of 19 than there were in this January of 20, December of 20. So in 1 year, we lost 25% of small businesses. That's a massive number, right? Obviously, many reasons for that. But the good news is, the other side of the coin is entrepreneurs see this as an opportunity, and we'll talk about why. But just in Q3 in 2020 alone, there were more than 1.5 million new business applications in the US. That was double the number pre-COVID for the end of 19. So twice as many entrepreneurs opened businesses in COVID than pre-COVID. And that's crazy to think about, but disruption creates an opportunity because needs have changed. So entrepreneurs, most of you say, hey, there is a gap here. Something is not being solved. I'm going to solve it by starting a new business, right? Whether that's a product, service, whatever it might be, because we see a need. Either you've experienced it or saw it or whatever. The first half of 2020 saw an increase in e-commerce equivalent to that of the previous 10 years. So the speed and scale of how quick things are changing is dramatic. The goal as entrepreneurs is how do we make sure we're capturing this opportunity, but validating it so we're not one of the 9 out of 10 businesses that goes out of business, right? Only 1 out of 10 still making it. So just because we see a need doesn't mean that we're offering the solution in the right way. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Some summary statements from people like Bain, Forbes, McKinsey, Harvard Review. There's some great articles that weekly come out about how you can capitalize and thrive through COVID. The biggest one is you've got to empathize with your customers. Well, for you as entrepreneurs, that should be second nature. That's the name of the game, is trying to understand and walk in our customers' shoes. And focusing on pains, not just functional, but emotional and social needs. And we're going to talk about that a lot of times we forget that there are more than just a functional need out there that we need to address. Safety represents the new value. So we are socially distant with Zoom. A lot of other things are socially distant. So whatever it is you're doing and offering, no time, probably going to be a while. It's not immediate that things are going to change, and it probably will never be the way it was. So that safety represents new value for your customers, and obviously some industries more than others. As an entrepreneur, your solution, whatever that is, a service or product, the experiences is how we feel, is what we remember as consumers, right? And there's a lot of data, especially McKinsey's done some great studies lately. If you want to note that down and go look at some McKinsey studies, if you're a data person, there is proof that through recessions and crisis, the housing, COVID, that those businesses, not just entrepreneurs, but big businesses that focus on the customer and innovation, have a significant financial advantage over their competitors. And digital transformation. We're all going online. We're all using technology differently. It's not going to stop, because now consumers know what's possible. Just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean their expectations are not going to be there. So we've got to reimagine our new normal, and we've got to adjust our value prop. So you might have started your idea a year, 2 years ago as an entrepreneur. You have to make sure what you started 2 years ago is still valid, right? You have to reevaluate, did the customer's needs change that I was targeting pre-COVID? Do I need to deliver this thing or create this new thing differently? So how do we get to problem solution fit? Many of you have probably heard this term before. You've probably heard MVP, minimum viable product, product market fit. Well, at the beginning is problem solution fit. How do we make sure that our solution maps up to the customer's problems? But there's actually a stage even before that we're going to talk about. But the key mindset that you need to have on this journey as an entrepreneur is you need to love the problem more than you love your solution. If you don't, your risk of failing is significantly higher than an entrepreneur who was focusing on the problem. Most of us are in the SAC region, so we're close to Silicon Valley, tech center of the world. Most of you are probably doing something around technology. And what we fall into is the trap of building stuff because you have the know-how and you're like, well, I know how to build this. I'm going to build this, and this is better than this last product. Well, that's great, but you're focused on the solution, not the problem. So before you even start building one line of code or one feature of a product, we've got to figure out what's the customer's problem, and then we build to that. Otherwise, you're wasting time and resources reiterating something that you're trying to build to get to find that perfect fit. So here's an interesting way to think about it. A lot of innovators are on the left side. We have this bias. My solution's awesome. I love it. What problems in the world can I solve, right? And you're just like looking for the problem. It's like, okay, I got a square peg and we're trying to put it in a round hole. And you're just keep searching for those target segments. That's the wrong way to go about it. That's the old way, where a lot of folks, you run out of money, time, resources, because you're worried about building the thing. The new way, the best way, where a lot of accelerators, the biggest ones in the world, you can look at any of the big accelerators you want, Y Combinator's, others. You need to start with your problem. What's the existing solution? Obviously, that existing solution in the market is not solving the customer's needs fully, right? There's some problem set that is not being met that you think there's a problem there. Now we got to figure out, are those problems even worth solving? Are there enough people with enough money that makes it worth my while? Otherwise, pivot and figure out something else. That's the innovator's gift, because now you're giving that user, that customer, a new, better way to solve that problem versus, I'm biased, I've built this thing, why don't you want it? How do I change it to make it better? So some of these quotes I love, because this is nothing new about chaos and opportunity. I mean, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, in the midst of chaos, there's opportunity, right? This is thousands of years old. Same with Plato, necessity is literally the mother of invention. And this is the time we're in right now. Most of us, whether it's daily life at home or work or whatever, kids, we're doing things differently out of necessity, whether it's learning from home, telemedicine, right? How you consume entertainment. So our needs have changed. And the degree of crisis actually makes opportunity even more important, because the needs are that more intense. They've shifted that much more versus just, yeah, I'll get by, it's okay. But in a crisis, the severity and intensity is amplified. So I love this quote from Bezos, and many of you have seen this one before, is talking about the customer. And again, this focus on them and the customer, not the competitor. If we keep our competitors focused on us, while we stay focused on the customer, we'll be just fine. And that's Amazon, like people like Disney and Starbucks and Nike and others who are great consumer experience companies. They're focused on the customer, not their competitors. Competitors, not the benchmark. Your customers' needs are. And that's what you got to remember as an entrepreneur. You have a leg up in many cases because you're starting from a clean slate. You're not worried about keeping the lights on and being more efficient and cutting costs. And how do I exploit what my core capabilities are and keep my people employed while I'm trying to pivot and explore new markets? You're starting from day one. Let's explore these new markets where the problems are. And then later on, hopefully you're successful and you got to worry about the exploiting piece as well. So it's all about the customer. If you don't believe it, here's the top 20 reasons startups fail. We listed the top 7. We're going to talk about several of these. And the first one's the biggest one. Most businesses, 42% of startups fail because they make stuff nobody wants. Don't be that person. You know, the right team is one of the other top 3s, which is why we're talking about that tonight. That's a big deal that most of us don't think about. And of course, down here, you don't have the right business model, which is a big key thing we're discussing with the Lean Canvas. So problem validation, you know, at a high level, think about these things. Do I have a problem we're solving? Who are the customers that have this problem? We have to identify why. Why do they have this problem? What are they trying to get done? And then how do we validate this? And this, to me, is the biggest gray area, hardest thing to do in business, period, whether you're a Fortune 50 or a startup, nobody likes to go validate stuff because it's hard work, right? You don't want to go stand on the street corner or at the mall or do surveys, or you're on the phone calling people or sending emails. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. The customer feedback section, getting insights, is the hardest thing in business. And most of us don't do it. I mean, I've worked for Fortune 50 companies. We don't do it. You sit around a boardroom, maybe your team is entrepreneurs, and you're like, oh, this is a good idea, and we've got some data here. Let's do this. Let's build this. Well, I had 2 people, 3 people gave me some feedback, so that's good enough. Nope. We need lots of feedback to figure out from the customer what their insights are and what their pains are. So I mentioned problem solution fit is not the first place we're actually starting. Step 1 is actually customer problem fit. You might already know who your customers are, but that's your opinion, right? You think, gee, these customers have this problem. That's the first thing we have to verify and validate before we start worrying about the problem and the solution is this the right customer segment that I'm even targeting? So first of all, it's the customer and the problem. Who's the right customer groups and segments? What are the problems they have? Then we move into, now I know the customer's problem, does my solution actually fit up? So we're not even talking about solutions until we know who the customer and their problems are. This is the discovery phase. Most of you are in the discovery phase, learning phase. You're trying to gather insights to understand the problem from different customer segments, right? You could say, oh, it's the auto industry. Man, there's like 20 segments in automotive industry, right? So, are you making an SUV or a sports car or electric vehicle? Are you, servicing cars? Are you parts? What are you doing in the automotive industry? So every industry has segments. Getting those customer insights for those specific groups is the first job you have to do. From that, we can then start to define what we think is our solution, and then go back after validation and offer this to our customers. Hey, here's my idea of a solution. Does that fit your problem? And we still haven't built anything yet. See, MVP is way down here. We're not wasting time and money building stuff. We actually have this is vaporware. This is an offer on paper, talking, gee, you've told me these are your problems. I've heard you. Here's the solution I've created. Would that meet your needs? Would that solve your problem? Yeah, it would, except how about this, this, and this? Great, now you can go back and potentially build a prototype. This is the fastest, cheapest way to market as an entrepreneur. And this is a big one. So literally we could spend several hours just on this concept and testing. Another quote from Steve Blank, obviously famous Stanford professor and author, helped start Lean Startup movement. There's no facts in the building, so get the hell out and go talk to customers. And that's back to this validation, right? Especially people who, many of you might be great at building things, techies. Certain types of people don't like to get out and, feel like you're being salesy. It's like, I want to just build stuff. Well, then you got to find some people to go validate stuff for you, because that's the key, is that validation. And there's no answers in your building. It's just opinions. Now you got to go out and validate. So homework number 1 for you folks, and Cameron has done a great job of creating a checklist for you guys with all these things. If you choose to do so, right? You're not turning it into us, but we want to make it easy for you. It's like, gee, what would I do? What's the next step? If you're on this part of your journey, maybe some of you are past this, you got to get out and talk to potential customers as well as non-customers about the problem. Have them describe the problem to you. It doesn't have to be, a list of 30 questions and tick them off one by one, but more of a conversation. Have some high-level questions, but describe the problem that you think exists. How do they solve that problem now? Observe them actually doing, something to solve the problem, whether it's a product or a service, right? That's the thing that gets overlooked a lot, is people will ask an interview, but people will actually tell you what they think you want to hear a lot of times, like, oh, how do you use it? Oh, I do this, this, and this. But if you observe them, you will see little nuances. You're like, well, hey, why'd you do that? Oh, I just have to do that because this doesn't work the right way. Those are pain points. So observing them is just as important as asking them questions and interviewing them. So once we have enough insights about their needs and problems, then we can start to craft potential solution. So try and see if you can ask at least a dozen. Obviously, the more the merrier, several dozen to 100, depending on if it's B2B, B2C. You might do a MailChimp, you might do an email or a form on Facebook, or stand on the street corner at, at the mall, depending on what you're doing.
All right, I'll pause you there and just see if there's any questions. There's none in the chat, but wanted to make space to see if there was any questions on that kind of first segment that Brian shared. He did mention I've put together a worksheet that I'll share once I share the recording after these sessions. So you'll get that worksheet for guiding kind of your homework if you so choose. Again, we're not like checking anything. It's really on you as the leader of your ideas and your companies to push that forward. So are there any questions before we move on? Feel free to throw it in the chat or unmute yourself and you can ask away. Going once, going twice. All righty, we're sold. Back to you, Brian.
Got it. All right, let's get into the fun stuff. So the lean canvas. I can't see everybody, but raise hands. Who's heard of the lean canvas before? I think most folks have. If you haven't, that's fine. I'm just kind of scrolling through here. Keep them up if you got them. Okay, not that many people have their video cameras on. Cool. So maybe 30, 40%. All right, that's fine. So the lean canvas is a one-page business plan. It is your business model on one page. And it is a significant document because it is one of the most significant tools that an entrepreneur has to use. And we're going to show it to you in a second, but it really, the old days, if some of you are old like me, you've created many business plans, 200-300 page Word document back in the day that took you 6-9 months to create. That does not exist anymore. By the time you get done with one of those 6-month Word document research papers, the market's changed. It's not iterative enough. It's not agile enough. So if you're a software guy, agile methodologies, very similar to what we're talking about here. You have to have a plan, slide deck, business model that can be changed and is agile enough to change. And nowadays, investors, even banks, don't expect you to have a 200-page Word document as your business plan. Literally, your 10, 11 slide pitch deck is your business plan because it's expected that that's going to continue to be updated and iterated. Your business model is how you create, deliver, and capture value. That is your business plan on one page. And we're going to show you how this works. This information we're going to go through in 5 weeks, helping you populate your lean canvas, can then be directly lifted to create your pitch deck, your 11 slide deck, because the content of those best practice pitch decks that you can Google and download that we'll talk about are the exact same pieces of information that are in the lean canvas. And we'll show you how in just a second. It also creates a shared language, the lean canvas in the business model, because your investors, again, talking about the pitch deck, they have certain things they're looking for, they're going to ask about. The business model of the lean canvas has that already built in. So it's a very good tool from a business perspective to be able to quickly and succinctly tell your story without it being a detailed technical dissertation of how you build something, which is not what your business model should be. So this is the lean canvas. There are many versions you can Google out there. It usually doesn't look pink and blue, but I've done this for a reason. So it's an adaptation of the business model canvas. Some of you might have heard the business model canvas or even seen or used it before. To me, it's one of the greatest business tools ever created. Every business school teaches it, uses it. Every major company and accelerator uses it. It was created by Alex Osterwalder, a company called Strategizer, about 10, 12 years ago. Ash Maurya created Lean Stack and the Lean Canvas. He adapted that to more of the entrepreneur's mindset. So 4 of the boxes were changed by him. And one of them was over here, which is the most important, which is the problem box. So your problem here, as well as your competition, your existing alternatives. The right-hand side in blue is really the customer section, right? This is the market that you're looking to get into. The customer segments, the early adopters, the channels, how you get your stuff to your customers, the revenue from the customers, and those unfair advantages, things that can't be copied that you have that your customers think are amazing. In the middle is your product or service, right? Your unique value proposition. The left-hand side is back office. This is you as the vendor. This is all about your internal operations. The solution, the metrics that you're monitoring, your cost structure, the competition, and the problem. The customer doesn't care about all this stuff. All they care about is your unique value prop and how you're getting it to them, right? So this encompasses your entire business model. Your business model does not get into the details of tactics like, marketing, I'm going to a trade show, or what type of social media. Though that's a layer above, right? When you think about fundamentals and foundation, the very bottom is your business model. How do I create, deliver, and capture value? These big rocks. Then, my go-to-market plan. What are those specific things I'm going to do? That's where your strategy and tactics come in, and marketing. This is the first thing that we have to worry about, is creating this. And this one pager is how you can take all the stuff in your head that you're trying to figure out your business plan, and all of that business plan stuff goes on this one page. That's it. Now, think of this as your executive summary. There's obviously lots of content behind the executive summary. You might have a deck for each one of these segments, right? Each box. You might have a deck for your channels, a deck for your revenues and your financial projections. Great. This is your executive summary. So we're going to look at a couple of examples and then do one ourselves. So this is Google's Lean Canvas back from 1998. First of all, we look at customer segments and their problems. We start on the edges. So who were their customer segments? Well, they looked at web users, right? People that were using the internet. What were the problems that they thought existed with people on the web? Well, irrelevant search results of existing search engines, and hard to find what you're searching for. So, back in the day, if whoever remembers this when it first came out. So very simple, looking at web users that have problem getting search results. So they said, great, who are the potential early adopters we can look at? Well, they looked specifically at Stanford students, right? Keeping it close because that's where it started. We have a captive audience where they had people they could go to, and starting just with Stanford students. What were the current competition out there, the existing alternatives? Well, it's Yahoo, Excite, and Alta Vista, which I don't even remember. So these were the 3 other search engines that were on the market then that they were competing with. So then they looked at, okay, what's our UVP? Well, that users can truly find what they're looking for. It's a fast search. The solution, usually you want to have kind of 3 bullets here. Obviously, things have evolved since many of these business models and lean canvases when we show examples. But it was to develop a technology that would allow users to search and find relevant content. Nowadays, if we redid this, we'd probably find a little more detail on a few of their solution features. That would go here. But they were using references to start with as their channel to get to Stanford students, right? So if I'm a Stanford student, I'm going to refer Cameron, he's going to refer Thomas, he's going to refer blah, blah, blah. They were looking to get advertising revenue as well as investment into Google for the searching of the search engine. Key metrics, they were looking at number of search requests and percentage of users who end their search on the first page. Obviously, if you've done Google Ads, you know that first page is key. Hosting, web development, those were their costs. Unfair Advantage, they were looking at this Google PageRank technology. That really was their unfair advantage, right? It was all that code, all that technology that it's not easy to copy tomorrow. So that was their lean canvas. And I have to say, it's definitely average at best. So nowadays, things have come a long ways. This would probably look a whole lot crisper and cleaner and a little bit more detail to it. So we're going to do one of these together and look at a different company. So the first exercise for us is we're going to look at YouTube. And we're just going to look at the problem and competition and the customer and early adopters. So we call that the leaner canvas. Just take the two edges and that's our first canvas. We won't worry about the rest of it for now, but we're going to break into some rooms and we're going to do this as teams and figure out what is the problem, what's the customer, early adopters, and competition for YouTube. So Cam, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yep. Thank you, Brian. So I will open up one breakout room, and then if you don't receive an invite to go to a breakout room, you're going to stay in this space with me, and we'll share our screens and we'll work through filling out the leaner canvas. So the problem, customer segments, early adopters, and existing alternatives. I did want to just kind of reiterate something that someone shared in the chat around the lean canvas and business model canvas. The lean canvas definitely speaks to a much more broader audience, and you don't necessarily have to have more business background to utilize the tool. So I shared a blog on the difference between those two if you're interested in learning more. So without further ado, I'll open those rooms, accept that invite if you get one, and then Brian, how much time do you want to allocate towards this?
Let's just do, what do you think, like 8 minutes would be good?
Perfect. Sounds like a plan. All righty. See you. All right. If you did not receive any invite, you're with me, and I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump on in since we only have 8 minutes. So are you able to see my screen here?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is one of the times you can unmute yourself. So our goal for our time together is to fill out the leaner canvas, which is this customer segments and problem boxes. And so we're using YouTube as our example. So when we look back to when YouTube was founded, who do we think their customer segments were?
Marketing.
So their customers, artists. Okay.
People who are visual oriented.
People who want to learn how to do things.
Okay. So we got
Students,
artists,
musicians.
Yep.
So it sounded like there was a DIY to like learn things.
Yes.
I'll put musicians as under artists for me, if that's all right with everyone. So I think one thing that's unique when we look at YouTube, right, is there's two sides to the platform, right? They have a customer segment who actually is paying for things, as well as then a user base that's using it and, providing data, which would be kind of that derivative asset that's sold. So for me, it looks like we're kind of nailing in who that user base, who do we think is the target customer segment to actually pay for the services at an early stage? Teachers,
Instructors, yeah.
Do you think teachers were paying YouTube to host their videos? That was your thought?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I mean, I would think instructors would be the people that would want to use YouTube to post videos of them
There we go.
teaching.
Awesome. So I'm going to add a little segment. So it looks like we have the users there. So we're filling out the users of that.
Someone
And then who?
selling a product.
Go ahead.
Someone selling a product where they want to teach how to use it and get people interested into it.
Perfect. So one sec. So it's sorry.
Manufacturers.
So we have the so you think manufacturers were the main customer segment. So who within these kind of organizations, I guess there's kind of a core segment of people. I'm thinking of the advertising kind of area as a particular topic area, right? All right, so we have manufacturers.
Someone had mentioned marketing people earlier.
Okay, I missed that one. My apologies. Thank you, Chris. Agencies.
I said teenagers, but I don't think they want to pay.
No, definitely. Right. So what's unique about YouTube, right, is they collect the data from users, right, and then they use that to sell to the marketing agencies to put specific ads out there. If we were to narrow that focus from the earliest stages with limited budgets, who would they target in terms of those users and customer segments? Who would be those early adopters?
Video producers.
I like that. Do we think that's the right one?
I don't know, advertising agencies, or I guess that's the same thing as marketing agencies, huh?
Maybe like gig learners or something like that. Just like learning, outside the box learning.
Okay. I think, yeah.
Cameron, up on customers, influencers has become a huge part of their customer list too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Hey, cool. Cosmetic companies.
But as far as early adopters, there were people that were real enthusiastic about making videos and stuff, and they wanted a place to put them first. So probably a lot of the artists were early adopters as well.
Okay. So we got I think the video producers and artists were the main early adopters. I agree there. And then we'll just say ad agencies to sell products or whatnot.
In the bottom product, yeah.
Awesome. All righty. So in moving over to the other side of the lean canvas, we've kind of defined our users and our customers as well as those early adopters. So what were some of the problems that artists, do-it-yourselfers, the teachers and the learners, what were the problems that they were trying to have solved?
Well, before YouTube, I guess if you wanted to reference a how-to or something, there would be a website or something that had a bunch of pages and slides, lots of text. And maybe people would be kind of turned off to that.
So accessibility.
So it's an easy format for video access.
There
I think artists wanted to create content and get it seen, and there was no easy way to do that. So
share content.
Yeah, like people weren't always trying to solve a problem. They were just trying to do cool stuff and share it with the world. And
totally great example, David. And I think they were still, I would say they were still solving the problem of that they couldn't get it out there as effectively without that video streaming, right? So great point. So creating content and getting it out there more effectively, maybe even efficiently, if we dare to venture. Any other?
People didn't have a budget. People didn't have a budget to do more traditional marketing methodology.
Gotcha. So limited resources to get content into market. Okay. So we got about 2 minutes left here. So let's move down unless anyone thinks there are some additional problems that we're solving. I think actually we've tackled really the user base. What would be some of the customers' problems that they were solving?
Missing information.
The access to a population of people they're trying to get to.
Okay, so I'm going to combine those, and I'm thinking kind of like a curated
product and marketing access.
Yep, and targeted marketing access. Nice. All right. Teamwork makes the dream work. All right. Last part is our existing alternatives. So how were these do-it-yourselfers, these users and the customers currently going about solving these problems? So getting, their, I guess, their content out there, getting marketing out there? What were some of the ways that they were currently doing that before YouTube?
Television program and advertising.
Television programming, yep.
They could do it on individual websites. So
Yeah,
somebody would have to know, how to find them.
Yeah, self-made videos and posted to websites, yeah.
Open mic night.
Open mic night. Nice. Don't put me up on one of those, that's for sure.
DVDs.
DVDs, all right, open mic night.
But were there any existing companies at that point actually doing this?
Books.
Doing what, John? And then I'll show
As the existing alternatives, providing easier access to video content.
I'm not sure. Was there? I don't know.
I'm murky myself. I'm not sure either.
Trying to.
Snapchat wasn't around,
No, definitely not. I don't. Was Flixer? Was that one of them? I don't know if that was.
Flickr?
I think MySpace might have been around.
May have been, yeah.
But I don't think MySpace did video. At the time, video was really tough. Like it was very difficult to do video at the time.
Nice.
Before the acquisition.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to close the other room, which will give us a minute until they get back. So as you can see, there's, as we're looking through our own ideas, there's a number of different users and potential customer bases. And for us, we really want you to focus on what are those core problems that they're facing, and identifying the existing alternatives, because that will really help us hone where are the current problems and the solutions that they're trying to get their current job done. And so building off of that is a core focus from there. So we like to look at this as the most foundational approach to who are you trying to target, what are their problems, and from a most basic sense, when you're communicating with them, right, is like, hey, this is you have these problems, right? And they're like, yeah, I do. And then, we know where the current solutions are falling short. So are there any questions that anyone might have on any of what we've been talking about so far before they hop over?
You have a different solution. Would your users and customers necessarily be different?
If your users and problems were different, would you have a different solution?
No, so you have split users and customer.
More like buyers and sellers.
Yeah, great question. So the difference between them is one actually pays you for the product or service, where the other does not. So your user base typically creates what's called a derivative asset, right? So they're using the platform or the tool that creates data that then could be sold to the user base that want that. An example, you could look at nonprofit models. So, people that are the users are the people that are going through and, getting services. And then people in the philanthropic space want to invest in that. And they're your customer base because they're buying the impact, for lack of a better term, right? And so it's that's how you look at it as a platform business. If you don't have a platform business, then you might not have the users or the customers. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep, thank you. All righty, welcome back, other group. We'll turn it back to you, Brian, and you can share your screen.
Very good, thank you. So sounded like you guys had a good dialogue, just like we did.
Of course.
So for those folks who hadn't seen the correct answers before, at least what some believe is the right answers, let's take a look. So customer segments. Mass market users doesn't really tell us a lot, but amateur video bloggers and advertisers was who they started to go after. And basically they said there's no hosting video as a service. And so some of you I know talked about that, no platform to host content, right? So there was no as a service hosting. They were really looking at early adopters as teenagers, college students, who many of you got, video hobbyists and filmmakers to be able to have a place for their content. And at that time you had Share Your World, Vimeo, and Google Video, I guess, were the only places to put video and content. So hopefully that kind of helps you get some hands-on experience, crafting the document. The common evolution is to put tons and tons of verbiage and, words on here. And then over time, you try and simplify, pare it down to your top, 2 or 3 things in each box. It just takes a little practice. So hopefully the exercise helped you understand how to use it and just be able to feel more comfortable doing it on your own. So this is one of the key insights that I wanted to make sure that I got across to you guys tonight, which the business model, not your offering or your product, is really the true product. You could say this in a few ways. Business model, not your product, is the solution. But at the end of the day, the business model is that whole thing that creates value for the customer. Just this widget, this mouse, that's not my true product. It's how I get it to the customer. It is, the price point. It is the design of it, right? It's all those things that are solving the problem, the features of it, as well as my ability to actually make it and make money at it. So homework 2 for you guys is to create your own Lean Canvas if you've never done this. I know a lot of you have, but it's a fun thing to do. You will love it because you will get excited about dumping all this content in your head, or all these Word docs or slides onto one piece of paper. So you can just look at one thing to say, here's my business model. And the goal is you should be able, once you get that down and simplified, to tell your story in literally 1 to 2 minutes. So it's what's your business model, and just walk them through the story. And there's a specific way. Usually you want to start with the customer side, then we move to the back side, problem and customer first. And so work on that, and we are happy to help you through that journey. So the next section is all about validation. We've talked about you and your idea, how we look at the customers and get insight to get customer problem fit, and hopefully get problem solution fit. Well, that validation, there are ways we can go about that and figuring out, first of all, what do we want to test? We've gotten customer insights, that's great. Now, how do we go out and test our biggest assumptions to know that we're actually on the right track to build something somebody wants? And there's some tools we can use to do that. What we're looking at here is the idea of we want to test our riskiest assumptions first. And you can see this when we start with our Lean Canvas, our document, and then we just went through identifying those riskiest parts. We call that the Leaner Canvas. And then some of you might recognize this, which is really the Lean Startup methodology, right? Build, measure, learn. And we systematically want to test our plan about the problem and the customer and the competition before we start moving on. So there are some tools, some processes, some things we can do to help us reduce our risk and uncertainty and make sure that we're validating the riskiest assumptions first. This graph really shows you the idea that in this validation or discovery phase, we're over here, we're discovering insights, we're searching for customer issues and trying to validate those. It's messy, right? It's not a straight line. There's stops and starts and backwards, and then you're changing questions and interviews and changing where your direction is. The idea is, if we have 2 or 3 major assumptions that if we're wrong, completely kill our idea, we need to test those first. Nothing else matters. And those should be the least expensive and easiest ones to do because they're the biggest. They're not going to take a lot of level of effort. The idea is the more that we start to move down that funnel, and we've gone from these major risks to, we got that validated, now we have another risk, and we keep fine-tuning our opinions, our hypothesis after we validate test 1 and test 2 and test 3. Well, to continue to validate probably is a more refined test. It's probably a more expensive test. Maybe it's some landing pages or running some sort of ads and price, comparison testing. So the more you go towards that validation to actually launch your product, that's the more expensive test and the longer test. But in the beginning, we should be able, within 1 to 2 weeks, 2-week sprints, get some validation that we're on the right track without a lot of cost. How can we do this? One of the ways we can do this is by looking at our business model. And this is the business model canvas, but think of it as the lean canvas. As you'll see, it's almost identical except for 4 areas. But we can break this into 3 different pieces. And some of you might be familiar with design thinking, human-centered design. Those 3 lenses of design thinking are about desirability, feasibility, and viability. Desirability is all about, does the customer need this? Do they desire this thing we're trying to create? That's all about the front side of our lean canvas that we talked about, right? The customer, the channels, the early adopters, and our value prop. Does anyone need this and why? We might have some big assumptions here that we need to figure out before we move forward. So those are important. On the backside, you hear it talks about partner, but it's the problem that we're trying to figure out. Instead of resources and activities, we've got obviously metrics that we're looking at, but it could be resources and activities that we need to look into, and the solution features. Can we actually build this, right? Feasibility is all about the ability to actually build something, right? Usually nowadays around technology. And then the third one is viability. Can we actually build this thing profitably? If we can't, then there's no point in building it. So these 3 things are really the lenses we can look at to figure out what are our biggest assumptions in each of these areas, and then test those in the market. A tool to do this is called the assumptions map. David Bland at Prequel, who actually now lives in Sacramento and has worked with us at the Carlson Center, created this. And it really looks at 4 elements, right? 2 X and Y axis, important and unimportant variables. Gee, this is an unknown, but it's really not that important. Okay, great. Do we know and have evidence, or is it unknown with no evidence? If it is, we do a sticky note, literally like you're brainstorming, you write down the thing that you think is an assumption, put it down here, right? Color code it for desirable, feasible, viable. But the critical ones are up here. Really important, and we have no evidence, and we're just guessing. Those are the ones that you as a team, those are our leap of faith assumptions. We're like, yeah, we really think so. Well, thinking is not good enough. That's your opinion. Those big ones will kill you. We have to test those first. We have to design experiments with a specific hypothesis to test if we're on the right track. And usually it takes multiple tests to get validation. But these can be done within 2-week sprints. So within a month, you could do 2 sprints. That's pretty quick to get validation on an idea if you're actually really working at this. Versus most companies nowadays will spend, a year or 2 in product development and hardly have any customer input. It's all about building the thing. So this is a very good tool for you as entrepreneurs to use in trying to help you prioritize and test. Within the whole testing kind of mindset, this is really the testing ideas feedback loop. Think about, we are starting with an idea. We are creating some sort of business model. We're assessing it. Then we're saying, okay, we have an assumption. Let's create a hypothesis. Let's run an experiment. We're going to learn from that. And now we need to decide, did we get our findings and validate them, or are they inconclusive and we need to do another experiment? Great. Got to do something else. Let's ideate again. What's this thing we needed to figure out, create a new hypothesis and test. So it's a learning, it's a loop between testing and actually designing your business, the problem, the solution, figuring out where you need to pivot, and are you validating those assumptions. So it's a great way to understand where you're at. The question's always is, well, when's enough enough? Well, if you run a few tests and you're getting the same feedback, the same learnings, great, you're probably done, right? If you're getting conflicting things and unvalidating things, well, then you're obviously not done. You need to keep experimenting until you've got some sort of, solid feedback. Some other tools that you can use as entrepreneurs are these test cards. So Strategizer, so you created the last tool, as well as the business model canvas that I work closely with as well. And they are the ones who created the business model canvas, as well as a value proposition canvas that if you join us next week, you'll learn about, which is a great tool, as well as these test cards. And this is for big business as well as startup business. It's all about your hypothesis. So this test card is real simple, and you could use a Word document. It's obviously not anything proprietary. We're going to do a test for something, and we want to have a time bound, 1 week, 2 weeks around this. And you're going to just state, we believe that blank, and use just one thing at a time, right? To verify that, we're going to do this. We're going to measure it by this. We're going to measure the number of people that go to the website, the number of positive response, whatever that measurement is. And we're right if blank. You need to have your guesstimate. What's your hypothesis? This is validated if 50% of people reply, or we get 1 out of 10, whatever you think that measurement needs to be to validate. And then you're going to just put over here your learnings. We believe that blank, restate it, but here we observed this. From that, we learned blank. Therefore, we're going to what? Are you going to pivot, do a new test, or move to the next test because you validated it? So here's an example of what a test card could look like. Just to say this is for subscription pricing. And we're going to state a hypothesis that we believe that customers will pay $20 per month for our subscription. Pretty basic. I bet many of you have an app or something that's going to be similar to this. To verify that, we will offer free trials for 14 days, then ask for a purchase. We're going to measure the percentage of customers who sign up for an ongoing subscription. We're right if at least 30% of free trial users stay on as customers for more than 3 months. So real simple. You can easily run these numbers, get quantifiable data so that you know if you've gotten the right info to validate, or if you have to go back and do it again. Questions there? Well, actually, one more example. So this one is a great example, which I love. We actually talk about this when we talk about MVPs as well. And this is Tesla. So Tesla in 2003, they wanted to test that the hypothesis of drivers are interested in a luxury high-performance electric vehicle. The experiment is build a proof of concept and ask customers whether they would buy the Roadster. So what they did here is, you can see that this, if you know the story of Tesla, they didn't actually build an auto plant and build cars and then go test the cars, right? That's very, very expensive. So what they did was they bought a Lotus Esprit. They took the engine out, took all the insides out, put batteries in there where the engine was, and called it a Tesla. So the idea was, obviously it's very sporty, but now it's an electric luxury vehicle. And they wanted to know if high-end sports car drivers with lots of money would want this. To do that, they said, okay, drivers are interested in luxury high-performance EVs. Experiment. Will you put down $5,000 deposit to have it built to order? So then they measured how many people said yes, they put 5,000 down, and obviously that percentage, or we're right if whatever 10% put $5,000 down. They had hundreds of deposits of $5,000 with not having built anything, right? This is their, not even an MVP, this is a prototype, right? Because you couldn't drive this. It's not a minimum viable product, it's a prototype. So it's really what we call an offer, and you're getting money, you're getting revenue before even building one thing. And this is what we call a mafia offer in the lean world, where it's so good that they can't refuse it, right? Versus we're going to make you buy it. It's like so good I can't turn it down, because they built this offer without spending a whole bunch of money, and now they're revenue positive. They're generating revenue without building anything. And this is what many people that are building physical products could do, with even some services. If you have an app, get on my list, give me a deposit. Obviously, if you don't build something, you have to return the money if you're actually taking the money in. So a lot of times we don't recommend you actually take the money. You're just taking the commitment for the money and the information of the interested party. You can show that to vendors as letters of intent to purchase, and that you could be revenue positive. So homework 3 for some of you, assumptions testing. You really need to build some experiments, some tests, whether that's physical interviews one-on-one, online, a landing page, if you have some sort of app, driving people to it, to get feedback. Depending on where you are on your journey, you just might be at the beginning with idea. You might be trying to build an MVP. So let's first make sure we're testing the right things.
All right, Brian, we'll take a quick pause for some questions. Before we do, I will share in our follow-up, we have a video from our Global Entrepreneurship Week where we had David Bland, who did the testing business ideas. He hosted a workshop for us that might be valuable to see further about that. So we will plug that in as our follow-up. And our first question, I know, goes to Chimmy.
Yeah, hey, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
We can hear you good.
Hey Brian, good presentation. It's really, it narrows things down and kind of help an entrepreneur be able to kind of focus on what they should be doing with intentions. So my question for you was on I think the slide before the Tesla, and I don't know if you can go back to it. The question I was going to be asking here is in regards to the free trial. How do you get someone to pay for a service without actually using your product? If that makes any sense.
Sure. So in this scenario, it might be a little different than your question, right? This fake hypothesis on the screen. Obviously, somebody has potentially built something, and now they're testing out that maybe MVP or prototype, offering free trials, right, of something. Are you asking about like the Tesla solution? How do you get someone to pay for something you actually haven't built, or there's not a service to it?
Well, when you mentioned earlier before the Tesla situation was more so about not having an actual product and actually collecting money, and then the next slide you said you don't actually have to take the money, but it sounds a little contradicting, but I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, I think my question is, how do you actually say, okay, how do you sell something to people without them seeing what you have, and that, is something that is a question mark, or, I don't know how we go about that.
It's a great question, and we could actually spend a lot of time on this one question. This is when LeanStack, who created Lean Campus, we talk a lot about this, and they have an accelerator and put people through. And the key thing here is that the belief is people are actually more apt from the early adopters to buy into your vision and the commitment, or whether you're showing something in writing or verbally telling them that here is what I'm going to give to you to solve these problems, that's easier to do than actually building that thing, right? So you might build something that's pretty ugly looking as your MVP,
Yes.
and now you're trying to sell that to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes even harder because, you know, it looks pretty bad. The early adopter is the key thing. You're not trying to sell this to everybody, not all of your segments. You're only selling this to early adopters. So versus what's on the screen, if you are in the beginning stages and you are just trying to get that to market, once we have enough insights of, okay, now we know the problem, we know my solution will work, we then create an offer, and that could be, again, in writing, or it could be verbal, to say, all right, Mr. Customer Chimmy, you have this problem. I've created this, and here's what it does, and here's my cost. Are you interested? And if you truly are the early adopter that has this intense need, you're apt to say, yes, sign me up. And that sign up could be, I commit to, you know, buying that as soon as you physically build it, versus taking your money now, where it could be on a sign up sheet, or it could be like Tesla, where they literally took the $5,000 deposit. So then you could have a bank account to put it in, right? And make sure you don't fraud people and, you know, take their money without paying.
Yeah. And sorry for more clarity, but wouldn't it, if you're only selective of early adopters, is that true validation?
Yeah, because that's who your MVP is only made for early adopters. Okay. So this is a mindset you as entrepreneurs need to understand. An MVP doesn't mean a minimum viable product for all of your market.
Okay.
An MVP is a minimum viable product for early adopters.
Okay.
Because that minimum viable product, that set of minimum features, is enough for the early adopter to say, yes, I'm in, because they're sharing your vision more than they're sharing your product that you've made. It's like, they're like, yes, dude, I have that same problem. Fix it for me. That's awesome. I'm looking for a solution. They're not the laggards or the late majority, right? Those people will not buy your MVP. It doesn't have enough features for them to buy it. They don't see enough value. Yeah. The MVP is only made for early adopters. And once you get traction with early adopters on your MVP, now you have revenue. Now you can start saying, okay, what are the things I need to do to scale up? MVP is not what scales up. MVP is your initial traction that you then build your full solution to scale up.
Yeah, that does clarify it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just to add in, Chimmy, we'll be covering that in week 3 about how to identify your early adopter. So we have a tool called the early adopter pyramid, which helps you to narrow that segment from your mainstream market. So great question. Any other questions before we head into the last section on executive team? You can throw it in the chat. You can unmute yourself if you have one. Going once. All righty, take it away, Brian, for our last section here, and then we'll lead us right into our Q&A with Dale.
Yes, and this section is very quick, and I'm going to make it quick because Dale is with us and talk even more about this. So the founding team, you know, most entrepreneurs be like, that's great, it's me, I'm a solopreneur, maybe I got a partner or two, but we don't think about many of the things about building our team. So, you know, here's an example, right? You got 3 of you, you know, maybe someone's the designer of something, someone's the tech guy, someone's out there selling, being the face, whatever those roles are. And you need to have different roles. That's what we're going to talk about. But investors, the top 3 things they look for, one of those is the team. You know, the first one is there a problem that a customer has? And then 2, is your solution actually the thing that's going to solve that? And then 3, are you the team to actually bring that to market? Co-founders, the relationships is a big deal. About 65% of startups break up because of people issues. could be your friend, your family, doesn't matter. It's all about people issue. And so you've got to document, even if it's your best friend. And it happens all the time, like, hey, you know, in 2 years, we're going to forget conversations that we had. And you're like, well, I said this. No, you didn't say that. It's not what I meant. Got to get everything in writing just so you both feel comfortable, right? You got to set clear roles. Who does what? And then the next one is a big one. What are your goals and aspirations? So if Cameron and I create a startup and we've got great roles and we got everything in writing and, you know, we're getting to market and he's like, great, when are we selling? And I'm like, I have no intention to sell. I'm going to run this for the next 20 years. And he's like, I wanted to, you know, sell and I'm out in 3 years. And we have different aspirations there. So what are those things that you are looking to do? You got to have a clear goal and aspiration. That's going to build trust. And the last one, we all have strengths and weaknesses. You know, I hate building technical stuff, even physical stuff. So I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. I'm going to hire someone to do that. I don't want to do finances. So those are my weaknesses. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and where are the talent gaps? So you might have 2 or 3 of you that are great at a few things, but there might be a few other things that are glaring holes. Doesn't mean you have to run out and get another co-founder. You just need to identify those so you can say, hey, we either need to get some people as, you know, contract or part for equity, or get some investments so we can hire these type of roles, right? Starting with why. Many of you probably know who Simon Sinek is, and you know, start with why, and this is really true. Why are you in the business you're in? Why are you starting your business? To make money? Obviously, we all are. But why else? What's the reason for that thing? What's the passion? The why you're doing it, and you as a leader helps really set the culture of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I love the first saying by Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You've probably all been in bad cultural environments, you know, at work where you're like, this is just dysfunctional and politics and it's just terrible culture. That's not where you want to be as a team. So from the beginning, you want to figure out what's the culture you want to set as a team, right? And it starts with you, the leader. And then why are you doing it as a big piece? Because the people that are going to join your team, they're going to join you because they're believing in your vision and passion and mission of why you're doing what you're doing. That's why they want to join your team. So even customers now, it's more and more because of Gen X and millennials, things, you know, around purpose and whether it's, you know, eco-friendly or it's climate or, you know, giving back. More and more customers, 72% say they feel it's more important than ever to buy from companies that reflect their values. Well, your why usually reflects your values. You know, why are you doing something? What do you value? People want to associate themselves with people of like mind. And even employees, back to this again, 83% of Gen Zs consider a company's purpose when deciding to go to work for them. So if you have your purpose, your mission, your vision statement all documented, here's who we are, here's what we're about, here's who we want to be when we grow up. That's why people join. That's the culture you're setting. So you need to figure that out from the get-go, because everything you do needs to go to that northern, you know, star, right? That's your guiding light, is our why we're doing this. The solution and what you bring to market could change over time, but it still should be aligned with what it is you're trying to do. At the end of the day, purpose-led brands have a whole lot more value, so financially significant versus those that don't. So start with that why. Everything else, mission, vision, values, you know, follows after that, but it's why you exist. What are you about? There's no right answer to what your key roles are. These are just some examples, right? You know, you can call yourself whatever you want, but at the end of the day, figure out, you usually want to have someone who is the visionary, you know, the face. It's going to, you know, be the C-level conversations, understands the business model and everything. The hustler is usually the salesperson. Hacker is probably that tech person building it. You know, you might have a finance person there too, depending on what you're doing. So figure out those roles, who's doing what, to get your team correct. The next one is advisors and mentors. Do you have some? What are their roles, responsibilities? What are their professional strengths? So these are a great way to get investors, get connected. As a starting point to a board, advisors don't have to be on your board, but there are people that maybe, you know, personally, you know, that you trust, that have done something, and maybe they're retired and they want to give back. So find those key people who are influencers, knowledgeable, that can give value to you and want to help you in your journey. This is an example slide of what you could put in your pitch deck. You're going to talk about your founding team plus your advisors, and that's where an investor could say, man, you've got some, you know, pretty big hitters on your advisory board, even though you as founders maybe have never done anything like that, but you have mentors down here that they see value and that are giving you good guidance. So your last homework assignment is to really get with your team, figure out what are your roles, your goals, your values, your salary needs, you know, your strengths, your weaknesses, figure out your gaps together so you guys, the team, are going in the same direction, being transparent. I'm going to stop there, and I think we're right on time, 8:20. Stop, sorry, 8:20 my time, 7:20 your time, and turn it to Cameron. Any questions, or are we going to hold those and go into Dale?
Let's just, there was, Fatin, you had a question to go back to a previous slide. Let's just do that real quick so then we can have the rest of the discussion on culture with Dale. So which slide was that? Feel free to unmute yourself. The why slide, Brian. That one. So yeah, so there's a lot of work from Simon Sinek. If you ever want to look further at start with why, that's kind of part of his strategy, and it's really working from that why outwards to creating your business. So we'll be sharing all these slides, but let's head on over to our discussion with Dale. So our Q&A. You can unshare your screen if you want, Brian, and I'll do an introduction for Dale, and then we can jump on in. So. So for those of you that don't know, Dale Carlson is the Chief Executive Officer of Bunker Wilson LLC, which is a real estate investment company. He also serves on the investment board of Moneta Ventures, a Sacramento-based venture capital firm that invests in early stage companies in the software, cloud, IT services, and healthcare and internet consumer sectors. He's also most well known for his founding of Sleep Train, the West Coast's largest mattress retailer, just 1 year after having graduated from Sacramento State. So he's an alma mater of Sacramento State and a proud entrepreneur who's #MadeAtSacState. He ran that company for 29 years and merged with Mattress Firm Holding Corporation, which was a nationally publicly traded company. Today, Dale focuses his energy on projects that support things he's passionate about, which are helping foster children and helping entrepreneurs. He's the founder and CEO of Sleep Train Foster Kids Program, and he's also the founder of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And so we're really excited to have him here today for our conversation on culture. And so getting to know Dale over the last few years, I've just really enjoyed learning about his passion for building company culture. And so wanted to just jump on into the conversation since we're limited here on time. You can say a quick hello if you want, Dale, just so they can see your face real quickly.
Great. Hi, folks. Glad to be here. Looking forward to talking with you and hopefully sharing some of my insights and answering any questions you have.
Awesome. Thank you, Dale. All righty. So jumping on in, the first question I have for you is, when we look at successful companies, a lot of times we really identify that innovation in the business model, that product or service, or our timing to market. But we found, one of those key differentiators is building company culture. And this thing around culture is this amorphous topic. And so I was curious of what does the concept of culture mean to you, and how would you kind of define that and look at it from your lens of being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think Peter Drucker's statement says it all, that culture does eat strategy for breakfast. Culture to me is the guts of a company. It's really what drives the company. It's what attracts people to the company, attracts customers to the company, is the culture that's built from the beginning. It's not something that is easy to put in a deck for investors, but it's more important to how the company will survive and how the company will drive and really push forward with the culture that you set. And the culture has to be set by the team, the founding team and the executive team. You can't build culture by assigning it to somebody below the executive team. It has to be built by the executive team.
Awesome. There was a lot there that we're going to dive into in a little bit, which I appreciate. And I love the fact that you mentioned culture is not just an attractor for employees, right? They're looking for those components, the purpose, the values to attract them, but also the customers, right? They're looking at what's that culture, and you're buying more than a mattress, right? When they came to Sleep Train, they bought more than just a mattress, and that came through the experience and the service they got when they came into your stores. And so with that, how would you describe the culture at Sleep Train, and how did you make it concrete or known within the company?
Well, the culture is, it is somewhat fluid, and it should be, because it has to grow with the company to some degree, because you have to, when we first started, the culture was just basically a family culture of a group of people that knew each other, and we kind of worked together. We, would go out and have pizza. I treat everybody to pizza and beer. It was an easy way to get everybody together. We go do events and we do things like that. And then as we grew, how do you grow that culture and decide what are you, who are you, and why are you here? So, the early days, it was easy for me to share, my whole reason for starting the company for Sleep Train was I saw an opportunity because I didn't think mattresses were being sold right. And I thought that there was a better way to do it. And I wanted to do it. I did not start the company to make as much money as I did. That was a great benefit, but it wasn't what drove me at all. What drove me was trying to make a better company. So we grew and we developed our culture and decided what are we, and we sat down and we actually did a session called, it was a cultural event. I brought everybody to actually a ranch down in Malibu. We had grown to a little bit of size, so we had 3 different sessions down there for 3-day sessions where I'd bring everybody down there, and we had this event which behind my back everybody called it Happy Camp because they said it was all about being happy and cheerful, enjoying the company and everything. But what it brought out was who they wanted the company to be, and that's part of what I wanted to drive. Was I didn't want the company that was just about what I believed in. I wanted to be a joint effort. So building the company culture means including everybody in what they see the company as. So through that event, we were able to really determine what our real going forward purpose, values, and visions were, and what our view was, and that drove it. And then later on, when we did the ESOP, my wife and I gave 25% of the company to the employees through an employee stock ownership plan, which is part of our culture. We had looked at it and said that, our employees act as owners, we need to make them owners and give them the opportunity to succeed as well. So once we did the ESOP, then we did a retake of what our purpose, values, and visions are and redefined them. At that point, I'll give you what we had. Our purpose that was decided, mind you, I was not involved in the discussion of what the purpose, values, and visions were. The company decided that, brought it to me. I might have tweaked a few words or a couple of things to say, hey, how about if we do this? But that was about it. But it came from the employees and the owners of the company. So our purpose was we deliver healthier lives, one mattress at a time, meaning that each customer mattered. And we wanted to, each word in your purpose, values, and visions, obviously needs to count. There is a reason for each word that we did. We was meaning the entire company. We, as everybody in the company, we all deliver a mattress. That means that the warehouse person that receives the product is part of that we. The salesperson is part of that we. The accounting department is part of that we. Everybody in the company is part of the we. Deliver was we are delivering the services. Healthier was important to us. We wanted our customers to have the best bed that was healthy for them. And we believe and culturally believe that we were making a difference in people's lives by providing a better bed and a better option for their sleep, so they got better sleep. Their lives were important to us. That's why that was in there. One mattress at a time was really focusing that one customer at a time. Everyone was important, and we had to take that at each time. Our vision was our community's preferred mattress retail experience. Once again, we are about the community, so we wanted to focus that, and we had stores in various markets at this time, so each community counted, and we needed to be focused on that community. Preferred, we knew that we had competitors, but we wanted to be the preferred one. Mattress retailer, obviously that, but experience was key. The difference that when someone shopped at a Sleep Train store, if any of you did back in the time, you would experience a different retail experience than anywhere else because of the culture of the company and the culture of our people. And then our values were simple. Integrity was number one. Ownership was number two. Inspiration was number three. And celebration was number four. The integrity was important. Everybody was held to a high standard of accountability. That was part of the culture. Our culture was a very high standard culture. We had high expectations, high accountability, but big rewards for those that participated. We experienced, and if you want later, we can talk about cultural clashes that we had along the way as we bought other companies. Ownership, we wanted everybody to take ownership of what their actions were, as well as they were owners of the company. Inspiration, we wanted to inspire others to do more for the community through our foster kid program. So it was important to us to inspire others to see opportunities to do something different and to help others. And then celebration, our company, part of our culture was extreme celebration. We did a lot of celebrating because we believed that was important, and it's what drove and attracted people to our company. When you spend time, from trips to Maui to picnics and barbecues to, concerts and everything that we hosted, it was about really celebrating the people that worked at the company because we were all a family.
I love that. There's a ton of great stuff in there. I'm trying to go through my notes here and just kind of pull out some of the things. One, I just love the topic around kind of the happy camp and where that ultimately, was kind of the kickoff of some of those mission, vision, values, and kind of getting your team in a place to work through that and really start to define that. And one kind of, I think there was kind of that pinnacle shift where you did the ESOP, and there was a time to start to redefine that mission, vision, and those values as the organization itself had shifted, right? And so one of the areas I wanted to jump back to was, I'll kind of have a broader question that I think I know you'll dive into on one example is, how did you kind of provide that recognition of people that elicited positive actions or negative actions as it pertains to value and culture? And you've shared a really, powerful story to me around the value of integrity in one of your sales individuals. And I think that would be something great for these entrepreneurs to hear as they're kind of building their companies, of how do you actually stand true in those values as you're building your company, even when it in the face of it can be very difficult.
Yes, your values have to be true values. They can't be just things that look good on paper. You have to actually execute on them and follow. If integrity is your number one value, you can't let people get away with things that are less than proper. In the sales world, it's about selling as much as you can, right? So I have had, over the course of my career there, we had several top salespeople that were bringing in $1 million in sales and better, and were fantastic at closing sales, but were found to be cheating along the way in the process to do that, and that wasn't fair to the other people, the other salespeople, because they would be winning awards when the other people really deserved it because they were following the rules. So, we had to follow our values, and our values said, if you don't do it with integrity, you don't work here. So we had to fire these people. And the sad part about that is that when you fire a very good salesperson and you have a competitor right across the street, where do you think they go to work? Right across the street. So you not only lose the sales they were producing for you, but you also lose the sales that they grab as they sell across the street. So, but you do that because everybody else in the company then looks and says, wow, this company has integrity. I'm staying here because I'm someone that has integrity and I believe in that. And they back me and they believe that doing the right thing. If you do the right thing, that always wins in the end, always wins. So I think it's important to know your values and to follow through and not let the fact that you can make more money by letting things slide rule you, because in the end you will lose more money. And I believe that you make more money by having integrity.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I thought that was a powerful example when you've shared that with me prior, and wanted to make sure you brought that into the space. So the next kind of question I have, as a leader, building culture, sometimes there's that very top-down approach, and I know that that's not your approach to building culture, but I'm curious of kind of how you went about doing that from a Sleep Train perspective, and how you who was in the room building that culture, and maybe at different stages as you built Sleep Train, how did that morph of who was involved in that building from, when you first launched a year or so off of, graduating from Sac State, to then as you kind of morphed into that ESOP later on in the growth of the company?
Well, as I said at the beginning, it's critical that I think that the executive team and management is fully on board. So it's first surrounding yourself by people that believe the same thing you do, and that they believe in the values. If they don't, you need to move on and grab somebody else. So you got to have the right people in the room, the right people at the table that believe the same values and the same principles that you do and what you're trying to accomplish. Because they all have to demonstrate. If the executive team and management team don't demonstrate demonstrate what the culture is, you won't succeed. But then as we grew, we got to figure out, how do we do that when we're all in the corporate office and we're no longer in the store and we're not in the other markets? How do you grow that way? So we grew by having cultural ambassadors, basically people that we believe were strong cultural leaders that knew what we believed in and believed in it and would execute on it. And then we would transplant them into the new markets so that we made sure our culture was taken to the new market and driven by the new market. And one thing I want to underscore is that we invested a ton of money in this category. And that's a key thing. It's very hard because you can't look on a financial statement and see where the return is, but it's there. And so when you're spending money on culture, you are spending money that you don't see the immediate ROI initially, but long-term you do. So we just, though, our culture from the beginning was to spend money on culture. In the early days when we didn't have any, that meant beer and pizza. As we got more money, that meant trips to Maui. So it morphed as we grew and as opportunities were there. But don't be afraid to spend money on culture and executing it. So we would give these ambassadors cultural money where they could go out and do what they needed to do to drive the culture, whether that meant, put a event together that would be for Habitat of Humanity, so we were giving back to the community, or whether that meant that they were having a celebration of somebody's birthday in the team. They did what they felt was best to drive the culture and to build the relationship that was there.
Awesome. I love that culture ambassador strategy and really helping them empower. And, as you grow as an organization, sometimes the executive team gets a little distant from, I guess maybe some of the blocking and tackling of what's going on in a store or things like that. And that's a way to gather that information of what's happening on those front lines and sharing where the state of the culture is for the company. So I have one more primed question, and then wanted to we'll give space for the attendees to ask some questions. So start getting your questions ready as participants. So the question I have is, what would you have done differently on day one of being an entrepreneur as it pertains to building that company culture from what you now know? So looking back, how would you have started that process earlier?
Well, when I started, I didn't have any concept of purpose, values, and vision. So it was really more a core belief and of what I believed in and what I thought was right, and how to treat people, and kind of the common sense things that I had. So, if I had started over and had that, I would have driven home an understanding of what our true purpose, values, and visions were at the beginning.
Gotcha. Nice. And where did your kind of core beliefs come from? So when you're looking back to when you started Sleep Train, where did you kind of, it partly was innate in you, but where did you kind of pull that from as you were starting the company?
I was, part of it is how I was raised. I mean, I was raised that you need to give back. So, part of culture to me that is critical that Brian touched on a little bit there as well, though, is how do you give back? In today's world, it is so vital that your company is doing something other than making money. You have to show some way that you are giving back or doing something different to be relevant to the current consumer. So, that was part of what I was raised with, that you have to do that. So I just came by that, luckily, by, how I was brought up. But I will tell you now, it's more critical than ever. If you don't have some way to show your customers that you actually care about others and not just your company, people will not buy from you. So 70%, it's like 75% of consumers will absolutely go to a company based on what they are doing and how they give back. And oddly, if you look at our foster kid program, people always looked at it and said, why did you choose foster kids versus, something having to do with mattresses? We chose foster kids because they were a segment that was not being, whose voice was not being heard and who were not being taken care of. So that was our reason. But in reality, what all the research shows you now is the consumer wants to see you do something that is not associated with your business, that truly shows that you're truly giving, because it's not something that gives back to you immediately. You're doing something that is unique to that. I'd also recommend from that standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, and is what we did early on that I think was very successful. We chose one charity. We chose one cause, one thing to go after, even though there's so many great things that you can do out there. We chose foster kids, and that became our sole charity of what we did, what we focus on. What that allowed us to do is it allowed us to focus all of our employees on our cause, so that they all knew what we stood for, why we did, and that the work they were doing was going to help foster kids as well as help themselves by having that one cause. When you're split amongst 10, 15 different charities, no one ever knows what matters to you and what counts. So I highly recommend choosing one cause and then going after that one and making a big difference.
I have one follow-up question on that, and then Chimmy, it'll go to you for the first question. It looks like you were the first one to put in the chat. So following up on having that like specific community purpose and kind of investing in the community, I'm curious, obviously, as you grow as a company, you have more resources to deploy. I'm curious if kind of at that early stages, was that something you were looking at? And if so, how did you kind of invest in the community when, there was you're going more, hand to mouth in terms of resources?
Right. So initially I didn't have any money, so we couldn't give money. But what I had was the access to buy mattresses at wholesale. And through a project that I'd done when I was at Sac State, I got exposed to at-risk kids in group homes, and I got to see firsthand that the beds they were sleeping on were horrible beds. Their backs were developing, and they're sleeping on what we call a banana bed that just kind of goes like that, and that's a bad way for the back to be developed. So what I did is I went to my manufacturers and I leveraged them, and I said, look, I want to help foster kids. I don't have any money. I need mattresses. You make mattresses. Will you give me 10 mattresses, and I will buy 10 mattresses from you at labor and material costs with no profit to you, and we'll donate 20 mattresses total to foster kids. And they said, sure, we'll do that. Of course, they never knew, and I made a deal that they would do that for every store I had. They didn't know I'd grow to be 317 stores. But eventually we were giving away thousands and thousands of mattresses. And then as things grew, we realized that, mattresses were great, but these kids needed other things. And so that's when we started reaching out to the community and saying, hey, can you help us with foster kids? Because originally, quite frankly, I was raised that you don't talk about what you give, you just do it. And then I realized after being on many boards for charities that really it's the issue is what needed to be discussed. So that's why Sleep Train took a cause that we would address the issue and ask the consumer to help us do that, but we would never combine the advertising with the issue statement. That way we could separate the business, say, this is what we believe in, this is what we sell, but we didn't mix the two.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So Chimmy, we're going to open it up to Q&A. So Chimmy has the first question. Feel free to raise your hand in the chat, or once we're kind of done, I can help facilitate that in. So take it away, Chimmy.
Hey Dale, nice presentation here, and I just wanted to say, I agree with a lot of things you said. Actually, what we have a company that we look at where we want to model some of our culture, and Salesforce was one of those companies. But my question for you is, as your company begins to grow and you start hiring people, or even, as you start to enlarge, how do you deal with the change that is happening as individuals are going through different phases in their lives, and within the company, and managing that culture? Or how do you, or if somebody doesn't fit the culture anymore, how do you deal with that problem?
Okay, so the first thing I'll say, if somebody doesn't fit the culture, you need to get rid of them. So it's that cold and that hard, but it's the facts. We called those people cultural vampires. They would come in and just suck the culture out of the company because they did not believe in what the culture was, or they were all about themselves and not about others. So it's the number one thing you can do to help your company is to get rid of employees that are not on your same path.
What if it was an employee who was on the same path and start to change, but is there something where you try to get them back in the path, or you just say, hey, man, it's time, because people outgrow things, so.
Right. No, absolutely. You have to, and we're in California, or most of us are, or I was. So you can't just go fire someone without having some steps in place. Make sure that's clear.
Yes.
So we always gave everybody the opportunity to succeed. That was our part of our culture, was everybody was given the opportunity to succeed. And we would get to the point that we would go the extra mile to make sure you were on board, that you understood what we were looking at. So that person, as you see them drift, is to bring them in to talk to them and say, hey, here's kind of where we're going. I want to make sure you're still online with this. If you're not, let's talk about it, and listen to them, though, because sometimes you may be offline and they can actually direct you to get back in line to say, okay, you're right, we're drifting from what we truly believe. And so be sure don't just make it a step, make sure that you're actually listening to what they have to say. So I think that's important to do that. And then as you go along, it's just, culture is something you don't just write down and walk away from. You talk about it constantly. At every meeting, we would highlight or talk about or somehow relate what our culture was, what our purpose, values, and visions were. We would constantly talk about it so everybody knew and it was there. If you just write it down and put it in the drawer, it's not culture. It's just a step you went through.
Okay, that very much clarifies my question. Thanks a lot.
Sure. If I can, I want to throw something out just to make sure I don't forget it, because it's very important too. You got to be careful on startup culture and its growth, because what happens is startup culture is that you're surrounded by the people that are all helping to build this. One of the things that can happen there is you can put yourself in a bubble and not be inclusive of others.
Okay.
It lets you be trapped into that, and it doesn't open up your company to be inclusive and to bring other minds and other thought processes in. So you need to be open to bringing other thoughts in. It just needs to be understood that, we'll listen to what you have to say. We listen to what your thoughts are. We will give you an answer of why we're not doing that or why we are doing that. But be very careful to not put yourself in a box where you're not inclusive and you're not listening to what people are telling you.
And just speaking in regards to hiring and stepping outside that startup hiring founder thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give you an example there for our company. We started out I was in a fraternity at Sac State, so I hired my fraternity brothers, and then we had hired every one of them or most of them, and then we went out to another fraternity, but we were only hiring fraternity people. And so finally I looked at our room and go, okay, this is not right. We need to open this up, you know? And so, you know, but if you didn't do that, we would have continued to be in that bubble. And that's not what we wanted. That wasn't what our culture was. We wanted an inclusive culture, and we weren't actually practicing it within. So we had to, you know, break down our barriers and say, hey, wait a minute, we gotta, this is self-fulfilling if we don't change it.
Makes sense. Thanks for the clarity.
All right, next question goes to Dwayne.
How's it going, Mr. Carlson? My name is Dwayne. I also go by Conscious. I'm an inspirational hip hop artist and educator, and I also graduated from Sac State. Nice to meet you. So my question, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So my question for you is, what were some of the things you did to manage and lead such a large company, particularly when there are so many things outside of your control?
Well, probably the first thing to recognize is that there are so many things out of your control and so many things that you're not good at. And that was, if I had to look back and say what I wish I had done better at, it would have been learning earlier on that it's better to hire the right person than to try to do it myself. I learned too late, or not too late, obviously, but I wish I'd learned earlier that team, and then giving them the responsibility and giving them the actual true responsibility, as long with everything that goes with it, was vital. It's when I did that, when I finally broke through and did that, that's when the company took off. Was all of a sudden when I empowered others to lead the company, knowing that they were in the same cultural line that we were in the same, and that's really what drove it, and the ability to do it was I knew that they believed the same things I did, but let them do it and realize that they could actually do it better. So what I kind of tell everybody, all new founders, is your job is to eventually work yourself out of a job. Your job is to find someone better than you in every step of this company, and then you have really truly succeeded. Because then you have built a company that is indestructible, that can do everything that you want it to accomplish, because they're all better and they're all doing a great job. So that's part of what you know, building it is. Yeah, I drifted, I think, from your question directly, but you know, growing it and leading the things out of your control is to understand what is in your control. You know, and only worry about those. If you're not in control of it, you can't worry about that. What you can worry about and concentrate on is what is in your control. You take what's in your control and you maximize that, you'll get through the things that aren't in your control.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Definitely. You did answer.
And by the way, everybody, my name's Dale. My dad's name is Mr. Carlson. I'm Dale.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Dale.
I appreciate the respect, but it always, I just feel, you know.
Jose, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to?
I mean, sure. I don't mind, Cameron.
Yep.
Hello, Dale. Mr. Carlson, that's the way I was raised. So you talk about your dad, I'll talk about mine a little. Anywho, the question is simple. Do you fundamentally believe you could have accomplished what you accomplished with your first startup right after college, Sleep Train, fully remote?
Oh, like in today's world?
Yeah. Like let's assume all the economics are the same, and hypothetically speaking, everything is still your story, your leadership, everything. However, it's fully remote.
It would be, yes, it'd be a different story, because my lean canvas, as Brian thought, would be different, because there is difference. The problem's different, the situation's different. You know, if I look at the growth of all the online mattresses. You know, when I started my business, nothing was online. So now, though, the online businesses they own a large portion of the business. So I would have to have a new model to solve the problems that I was solving. I'd have the same problem. The mattresses, I still don't think mattresses are done right online. So I think that there's a way to do that, but it would be done remotely and more done through this. What I do think that exists with the situation we have now is the opportunities for your team is way different than it was then. With the remote person, I mean, I can have somebody who's in Salt Lake City be on my team and be an executive of my team, and still bring value to to the table and more value than who I could find locally. So, I mean, there's opportunity there right now as well to do it. It would just be different if I had to do it. But I think that the remote, you got to look at what the pros are of the remote. There's a lot of remote, there's a lot of benefit. Today's an example. You know, if this was normally in the normal times, and as Cameron knows, as busy as times were when I'm trying to get down to Sac State in order to be there in person, to do the event, it's a big commitment. Where here, you know, I log on, we get to talk, we get to see people and do that, and I'm on and I'm off. And so the opportunity for you people to hear your folks, to hear more from different people all over the country. And that's what I do right now. We're, you know, I'm in a CEO group, and we have speakers that we would never be able to hear from before, that now we get to hear from because they're just logging on for that 45-minute talk and they're off. So always look at the positive and then spin it to work for you.
Thank you.
Awesome, great question. So looks like we probably have time for about one last question, and then we'll do a little bit of wrap up. So the last question from the participants will go to Stephen.
Thanks, Cameron. Hi, Dell. Thank you for talking with us today.
Sure, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And great question so far. I kind of just wanted to actually piggyback off Jimmy's question. You know, he talked about an individual having, you know, challenges in their own life and their ability to kind of maintain the culture that you created. I would be interested in your feedback about how the climate around your business changed and how you had to adapt to that climate with the culture. For instance, political correctness. I mean, you were probably building a business during a time when political correctness wasn't even coined as a term. And so I imagine a lot of things changed. I'd be interested to know how you face that change.
Well, yeah, that's yeah. You need to roll with the punches, and you need to actually be aware of what's going on around you, and look ahead and see what. And I guess what I would say, in getting back to the culture, you need to take everything. What we did is we took everything we looked at and put it through our cultural filter. Does it match our filter? One of the things we had as our culture, which I'll sidetrack on this just a bit, we had what we call the triangle of success. It was an inverted triangle that had the employees on one corner, the customer on the other corner, the company on the bottom. And for the company to succeed, you couldn't tilt too far to the employees, meaning you couldn't, you know, if the employees wanted to, say they wanted to close earlier, they thought that we shouldn't be open as late, but we had customers that wanted to shop at that time. We couldn't really accommodate that and at the sacrifice of the customer. And then everything had to work together, surrounded by our purpose, values, and visions. And so everything had to go through that. So I'll share, you know, political correctness was definitely there, that now you have to be very careful of what you're doing. You know, we, in our early days, and part of our early success was Rush Limbaugh doing spots for us. In today's world, would I do that again? You know, I think it's very risky. There's a lot, you know, so, and you know, let me be clear, Rush Limbaugh did spots for us, as well as, let's see.
NPR.
NPR, yeah, we did NPR,
Yeah.
we sponsored NPR. We did, what was his name? But we had all sides represented. So we had liberal stations that would talk, and then we had Rush. But in today's divisiveness, you know, Rush is a whole different story than it was back then, than where it is today. So, you know, we made a decision and we did part ways along the way as things had changed. And we thought it was appropriate and wasn't fitting our model at that time.
So, it's a tough answer. Thank you for giving your answer. I appreciate it.
Let me also see one thing to be clear. If integrity is your number one value, like it was ours, I believe you still got to do what you believe is right. So don't let political correctness drive your complete decision. Just make sure that you are looking fully at it of what you believe in and what your integrity is for your company and what you believe in. And that could go on all sides, right? That could be that you're about climate change and you fight for it, or you're not about climate change. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. It just means be true to who you believe your company is and the culture that your company is. Does that make sense? Because I think people feel that when they deal business with you, and those that don't want to do business with you will not do business with you, and those that do will.
Yeah, that's just authenticity right there, like you're defining. I mean,
that's exactly it. Be true to yourselves. Well, I wish all of you the best, and exciting. You got a great program here with Brian and everything there. I wish I had that. That's part of why. That's basically why my wife and I did sponsor the center here, was that I didn't have any of these tools when I started, and it would have been so much easier and so much faster for me to succeed if I had these tools early on. So take it in, learn from it, and challenge yourselves.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dale, for spending the last half of our evening with us and answering our questions. Really appreciate you spending the time and sharing your experience and knowledge with all of us. So I'll draw us to a close here and kind of wrap us up. I am throwing some links into the chat feature. These are some resources and upcoming programs for you all to plug in. Obviously, this is a 5-part series. So next week, we'll be back here from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be tackling the unique value proposition, solution, and your unfair advantage. So we'll be teaching you some new tools of how to create your unique value proposition using the unique the value proposition canvas, and also going through some ways to define an MVP. So some resources I wanted to share. One was Mentor Sacramento. It's an online mentoring platform. You can hop on there, create a profile, and connect with mentors across our region. We also, if you're a student and leading a team, we have a program. The applications are due. It's called the Mastermind Cohort Program. We'd love for you to apply. That's on, that'll be kicking off on February 8th. We'll be selecting 10 to 12 teams to go through that cohort program. It's a 12-week long program. We've also have a workshop coming up on February 18th. It's called Grants for Startups, the definitive freelance and startup guide. And that's with a startup called Open Grants. We'll be teaching you how to go and apply for grants as a startup. We also have 2 upcoming conversations with entrepreneurs. One is an Ask Me Anything session with Roshan Davis, who's the co-founder and CEO of Unseen Heroes. That will be on February 18th. He's an entrepreneur made at Sac State as well. And then we have a startup happy hour on the 23rd with Jonte James, who's the CEO of Nature Track. And then lastly, that's just our Carlson Center website. We have office hours. Would love for you to plug in. We'll be sharing the recording, the PDF of the presentation slides, as well as that worksheet that you can tap into, and any of the tools in a PDF format for you to utilize. So without further ado, I wanted to say thank you again, Dale, for spending the last half of the evening with us and providing your experience and expertise. And then thank you, Brian, for sharing and running us through all that great content. And then all of you as entrepreneurs taking the risk to build your idea and create an impact in our world. And we're really excited to have you here and have you as part of this 5-part series. So we look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll call it an evening, and stay safe with those stormy weather. So have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.